Live. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a Thursday afternoon in very, very hot and dry California. Thank you for joining us once again here on Deering Live. Really excited to have you here. Now, for those of you who know Jens Kruger, he definitely doesn't need an introduction. For those of you who don't, I would say that Jens is arguably one of the best players to ever pick up a banjo. Born and raised in Switzerland, Jens has lived in North Carolina since 2003, along with his brother Uwe, and is one-third of the immaculate Kruger brothers, who, if you have not seen live, I would urge you to do so as soon as you can, whenever that may be, but check them out on YouTube, check them out on their Facebook Live sessions, which we'll be talking about here momentarily. But Jens is a banjoist, he is a composer, and he takes the world of banjo playing and construction to new heights, working very closely with Greg Deering here and the rest of the R&D team. And he pushes the banjo to what it is truly capable of. And like I say, our guest today is Mr. Jens Kruger. Jens, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. It's fantastic to be on this live stream. This is really great.
This is very cool.
Thank you.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you. And I know you were here last week with us, but we were talking about strings last week. So this week we're going to get into all things Jens. And then with me, as always, is Mr. David Bandrowski. How are you, David?
I'm doing well.
Excellent. All right.
Hi, David.
Hey, Jens. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Would you mind playing us a little something to get us into the groove here while we get some people on board?
Yes, I just play a little bit of a piece called Margarete.
wonderful. Sounds like you have an accompaniment there too.
Yeah, Uwe came in, and you probably heard him come in, so Uwe's here.
Hey,
That's
Uwe.
great. Hey, Uwe.
All right.
Well, before I was going to talk about kind of some of your story, but maybe I want to jump into kind of what you're just playing, that piece, some of the compositional techniques you're using there. You're kind of using you're kind of using some like a technique where you're moving um, leading tones, arpeggiating chords, and using leading tones, kind of moving one note down a lot. And it's a common. I don't know what era it's from, but it's classical piano. But I don't know the exact era, kind of.
Well, yeah, there's different techniques involved, but it's a piece that I've written on an album called Lucid Dreamer, which was a commission piece by Chamber Music America through the Contras Quartet from Chicago, and it's been a while back, and this was a piece that was dedicated to my mom, my mother. Her name was Margarete. And I always wanted to write a piece for her. She passed away a long time ago, but with the composition technique, basically, the idea is that things I have common tone. I use common tone technique in this piece in particular. I just wanted to stick to an underlying concept. Sometimes underlying concepts are not. You can really put your finger on what it is, but it gives a sense of a connection to everything that is happening. And so I'm always trying to find an underlying concept for not always, but a lot of times I try to find an underlying concept of a composition. So it sort of starts to sound like a substantial something.
Right.
So in this case, I have a C chord, for instance, and then I go to F major 7. Which of course, the E becomes the major 7. And so I can move to the chords. And then I have G suspended. And then I have the B standing and the D standing for the G13. And then it becomes the E suspended, going into E suspended. And I have common tone going into all the other chords, but they're connected in a way where I have standing notes, and I think that works really well. That's a technique been used 200 years ago, mainly to connect chords, a lot of times. So yeah.
And it's interesting that you can get it to, it sounds like it doesn't just sound like chords, moving chords around kind of randomly. It sounds like there's a melodic idea to it too.
Yes, because it's the melody. Da, 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 da,
So sometimes is the melody kind of coming to you first, and you're kind of finding a harmony to it, or are they kind of coming together at the same time?
It's a combination, but most of the time I start with a melody. For me, still I'm very much bound to melody writing. So I come up with a melody that most of the time also sounds good just on the banjo solo. Because I play it a lot by myself or practice a lot, and so it feels just nice to have something that works alone. Or I try to find notes that work with the melody at the same time, but when I go like, you can really hear the chord structure because I'm playing the chords right. behind the melody. But if I have maybe something that is more like a you see, in this sense, there's really just melody. And most of the time I'm leaning on creating a melody first by finding themes that I develop and then go from there.
Right, right. And then it's also beautiful how you can use a lot of your music has this. You can play, slower music on the banjo and really have big tones. It's really let the banjo tone really come out of the instrument, and not just having a flurry of notes all the time.
Well, that is an interesting development that happened. When I used to play a lot, as a musician, I played also guitar, electric guitar, and I would come home after shows and would play lots of places where there was just party, a lot of party, and of course banjo is always associated with lots of notes and playing fast.
Right.
And then I would come home and maybe my family would be asleep, my kids, or I'd be home, and I'm in the living room and I can't go to sleep, so I have to sort of find something, and then I sit around and go. And then I realized that the banjo I was playing didn't have the sustain I wanted to have the banjo. So I needed a way of setting the banjo up so it would have enough sustain to do that. And one of the ways is that I kept my head fairly loose. The banjo head is not as tight as usually right below. This is a G, you see. So it's below a G. And the strings are fairly thick. These are 11s. And 11s just have, if I play a single note, I have lots of sound, coming from one string. If the string's really thin, I can get that same kind of sound, but it's not really, I cannot really dig into it. Playing slow doesn't mean you have to play quiet.
Right. Right.
It's not like, if I play this with a string quartet, it's really. You know what I mean? Or if I play. And so in order to have the dynamic range that I would like to have for expression, a thicker string gives me more headroom up.
Right.
And even though sometimes it has disadvantages, playing a thicker string, but for me, it works for what I do, especially when I play my brother Joel or string quartet, because I just have I have a great dynamic range with a thicker string. And then also I developed a few, not developed probably, but I just for myself, I found that that I use vibrato, and the use of vibrato and why was it important to me? Because if I just have a note standing, if I just have it standing, there's nothing happening to the note, and it seems to just sort of disappear out of consciousness. It's like a train that you just watch the tail and just move away. It's hard to keep your focus on. But as soon as it does something, it moves a little bit, it's easier to keep your attention to it, right?
Right, right, definitely.
And so when I start a note, then I can easily then start adding a little bit of the. And you see now the note really, and I can decide how much I want from that. And then I realized if I have open chords, I can just move the neck a little bit. Sonny Osborne has been doing this a lot, but I think he once broke a neck off. I mean, I read that story. I don't know if it's true, but I think it was just in the end, But when I play all the strings, 3 strings, and I do this, right? It starts to really, and that's nice. So when I play, for instance. and it's not much. And
Yeah.
I usually just do it when I have a pause, you know, when I play like,
Right.
you know, as soon as I have a pause, I start to add something. And then I also, I started muting the bridge with the palm of my hand. And I can get sort of this sound. You know, I play really hard and then leave it alone. It's like a wah-wah pedal. And then I can, and then I can add a little of that chorus effect.
Right.
See that?
Yeah.
And then I can add chords maybe.
Yeah. Sounds great.
But like I said, thanks to my brother, he's helping me here. But with the thicker strings, it allows me to do this. Now, there's a disadvantage, you know, with thicker strings, because when you want to play really fast, it's harder to get note separation as easy as with thin strings have a better note separation in a bluegrass band. You know,
Right.
so you got to play a little different to get the notes to be distinct. But it's a technique, you know. So it's not quite as easy. But it works, you know. For what we do, it's good enough.
I love how Uwe even knows when you're about to just stop suddenly.
I know. Uwe is like a shadow. It's always surprising when we're in the studio and we record live. The string quartet, I was just saying that before, we recorded, you know, Rome Mountain Suite last time, I think, with the string quartet live in the studio. We all just sit around in a circle. And then I look back, you know, I go back to the track, and Uwe is like, every note is with my note. It's really like a miracle.
Right.
It's scary. Somehow a little scary.
Hey, you know, Uwe's he's looking in the chat right now as well. I can see him.
Oh no.
Carry on.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you're lucky to have, you know, a band member for this long, you know, that you get to play with, so you really get to, so he gets to be like a shadow, you know, to that close, and then, you know, your brother as well.
Yeah, we used to, you know, I mean, we're brothers. And so we had our times where we, you know, would struggle with each other as well, you know, but we got over it at one point and just stopped, you know, we just support each other, I think. So it's very, very beautiful to have that. You know,
You two have kind of different musical backgrounds a little bit, right? I mean, you grew up playing together, but you both...
Well, our basic musical background, you know, the first sort of impulse of musical background is pretty much exactly the same.
Okay.
Because we sang the same songs with our mother, our father. We had the same albums we listened to, of course. We were not exposed. We didn't go to many concerts as children. You know, it wasn't the thing that we would do. I think I saw my first classical orchestra, you know, in my teens sometime. So there was not much concert going, you know, and Uwe, you know, so our basic background is very much, we knew the same albums, you know, the same Deep Purple and the same Country Gentlemen and the same, you know, pretty much the same Chet Atkins and Louis Armstrong and all that. So, and Beethoven, and I think it connects us to a degree that we grew up with the same German sort of folk music and melodies, very beautiful melodies in northern Germany. Because Northern German folk music is based around guitar as well. So people sing and play guitar. C.F. Martin came from Northern Germany. And, you know, so a guitar builder. And so both of our parents, you know, played accordions and guitar and recorder and harmonicas. And, you know, they sang. My father even owned a banjo. There's a picture of my brother holding a banjo when he's, I think, 3 years old. And,
tenor banjo or
tenor banjo, yeah. a tenor banjo, and it broke. My father sat in it once. It was leaning in an armchair, and he came home and he sat into it and broke the neck off. So I've never seen the banjo actually intact. I can't remember it being intact, but the parts were laying on a shelf in his work room, and we took the pot and we took it into our playroom and dropped Lego on it and see how far they can bounce.
Just saw a question here. Can you play some Beatles on the
and so forth. Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, but so Uwe then later learned got into blues and all kinds of things, and of course me too at one point.
Right,
Listening to a lot of but I think we have a very similar liking. When I look at it overall, we like a huge variety of music. We still send each other links of people that we discover, or compositions we like, or composers we are fond of, and it's nice to have that, to share that.
Who are some musicians that you're listening to now that are inspiring you?
Well, I just recently, listened to quite a few of Jacob Collier, because I thought he's like a phenomenon, and I'm really just it's just great to see this young man, what he does. It's inspiring because he's going his own path, no matter what everybody's maybe thinking or not. But of course,
I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, he's from London, North London, and he plays piano, guitar, drums, bass, anything, and he sings unbelievable. His mother was also a musician teacher, but he's got something special going on. He's a harmony whiz kid, so and he can sing unbelievable. He's very expressive and very direct and very just on the spot with new things. So, but there's a lot of people I really like. But when I'm composing, I'm usually not listening to too much music.
Exterior, right?
Yes, because when I want to write music, it's sometimes difficult to listen to already existing music, because not only it can be discouraging because it's so good and done and it's finished, right? And I'm still in the process of finding themes or something that I could make into something. And if I constantly hear, finished, beautiful things that touch me so much, that it keeps me away from my own imaginations. And so I have to stay away from it. I don't do that consequently, but I just try to, take it out of my life a little bit. So I then can sit down, because I realized, for me, I'm easily influenced by a lot of things, and it's like when I see good food, I really want to eat it, or I'm influenced. I go after things, and so when I hear great music, I go right to my instrument and try to use some of the things I just heard, but they're not mine yet, and sometimes they get into the way of my inner.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Inner things, that I need to get out now. There's a time for that, but maybe in a later year or later month, or I don't know. It has to sort of settle, like compost. New things have to come in and sort of, become fertile.
Right.
And but it takes a while, and I cannot expect new things to be that all the time. Sometimes it happens, but it's very rare. I'd rather the things that came out of deeper from within me, I enjoy for a longer period of time. Let's put it this way. I can then play them in years to come, and I feel like, yeah, they're part of me. They actually are part of me.
What can you say to people at home that are, we all get kind of stuck in ruts, or stuck in plateaus where we aren't feeling inspired or creative, or feel like we're getting better on the instrument? What are some just almost not necessarily technical things, but to get inspirational things to get out of these ruts sometimes?
I think there's actually an interesting way that I use all the time, and I have said it to gave this hint. It's not. You see, that's the interesting thing about music. There's not really a recipe that works for everything,
Mm-hmm.
but what helped me a lot and still helps me a lot is if I sing along with what I play.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So as I go da 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 da, and then da ba 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 da ba da 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 da. You see, so and then all of a sudden I connect my melody mind to my instrument, because
Your
otherwise,
ear, almost your ear, that creative ear side opens up as opposed to you doing the theoretical, mathematical.
or opposed to the things that I can already play.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so if I just working on a new little da ba da ba da ba ba da bum ba da ba da da ba da bum, and so on. So, but this is all thought out. I didn't try this on the banjo.
Right.
The problem is that I get into situations where I think of music and it's so complicated that I have a real hard time playing it. And then I practice for weeks and I still sometimes can't really get it right, and that's just bad luck.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time I find things that I'm also able to play, at one point. And
Right.
and so it's a combination. I sometimes work with chord structures that I like, but most of the time, like before, I try to play something that's in my head. And in order, if let's say I have this note, and if I go da 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 dum, da 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 dum, if I would have, just as an example, if I would have just played these notes, I would not have played that.
Mm-hmm.
I played it because I was singing along. So
Right.
my singing actually really created a different pathway of how I play music.
Right. You get out of
And
just muscle memory, kind of.
yes, right. It really opens. And then also it helps me to remember where the notes are.
Mm-hmm.
So da 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 da.
Right.
Anything that
Right. It
I
helps
can.
you learn these intervals and where they are.
Yeah, so actually I could possibly I can play anything I can actually sing,
Uh-huh.
because my fingers will go there.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of times I'm not really sure of what I want to sing, because and there's music going on and I don't really hear my music. For instance, I hear my banjo too loud in the monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then I'm hearing the sound of the banjo more than my own idea about music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a disconnect. So that's why I practice most of the time at home, stuffing a towel in my banjo so it's not so loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so and then I try to sing along. It helps me if I go that's, I think, was pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would have just tried to play something on the banjo, I would not have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way of opening new ideas.
How about pictures in your head?
Well, yeah, that's we just mentioned that I have a method how I basically compose
Uh-huh.
by there's a bass problem. The bass problem is somebody asked me if I could write a concerto for Roan Mountain or for Ogden or Banff Center or for Canada, or that's just an idea, and then I say yes, and then they already confirmed the premiere date.
Now you're
And
under the gun.
I haven't written a single note, and they already, and so it's quite scary. It used to be, but now I know I have a process where I know I can actually finish a piece.
Right.
And my process is that I get books, like how you say sketchbooks. They're notebooks, like, yeah,
Sure.
like scrapbooks, and so I write in, let's say, a scene of that particular commission that I gave myself, even, or so I write in a scene or a person or something, and then I
Write it in, meaning you write like a script, or you write?
No, I just write everything
Awesome.
that is part. Let's say there was a lady. There was stories about women of the West for the Ogden, and there was tragic stories about women who lost their children, or one woman lost her husband, and he never came home. No, that's not true. She lost her husband by an accident on the farm. She, after a few days, she tried to heal him. He died. She put him on a wagon, and it was hot summer, and the child, and she had no more water, and it was just terrible. And it took her a week to get to Ogden, and just all these amazing stories, of the women of the West that I said. So I combined them all to one story, like Lady with Parasol. I called it a woman a lady that lives in a hotel and goes to the railway station down at Ogden and says goodbye to everybody. But in the evening, when everybody, she goes home, she goes back to the hotel,
Right.
because she can't leave the place. She doesn't know where to go.
Right.
And then I write everything I like about the story or touches me about this whole idea down. And then I try to create music that doesn't interfere with the image I have about this. Now, when I have this woman think about this lady in that hotel, it will not be, it will also not be, it's not going to be that. So you try all the possibilities. It's not going to be, it's not going to be that. So what is it going to be?
Frame of reference of some kind.
Yeah. So because my mind sticks with a certain idea of emotions, then I can actually find something that doesn't disturb that, at least, And I find a color maybe that's like this. Get the idea, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, it moves forward, and so on. Yeah.
That's fabulous. It's almost like you're film scoring for this movie that's in your own head.
Yes, actually it is. And because then I have all these themes ready, all the scenes ready. I know and then for the Lady with Parasol, for instance, it's about a 5-minute piece, 4.5 minutes. I have 3 different pictures I use, and these three different pictures help each other, and they develop each other, and it becomes a piece. And then I have this for each piece of the entire hour,
Right.
and that gives me enough material then to work on. So the theme collecting is a process that takes quite some time, and just sitting down and working on it, and then once I have the theme, I can make music out of it.
Is there a documentation process there? Like, if you've got a pretty unique story, in as much as you guys kind of left home when you were 16, right? Traveled through Europe, busking, and really kind of seeing a lot of things that maybe kids your age hadn't seen, you know. Do you document stuff as you go through? Maybe take a picture of something that you want to remember later for this kind of process, or is it just kind of kept up here in your head?
No, I was never, I never had cameras, you know, when I was a kid, or it never came to my mind that that could ever be of any importance for me. You know, you'd live and just sort of survive and go through life.
Sure.
But I remember a lot of things, you know. It's all the things that you experience, you know. It's the good, the bad, and the neutrals, and
Sure.
they all leave an impression on you, and that you carry them with you, you know, as long as you go. But my brother and I, we had an interesting life because we moved around a lot when we were children. Parents moved from town to town quite frequently, and then our father also went through different professions, and we ended up, you know, running a restaurant and a butcher store, and
Wow.
you know, and so we became street musicians because there was no more home really, and we stayed on the streets for about 2 years, and in that time we met some amazing people we would have not met. And it's also interesting today, when we think about that, when you're once at the very lowest spot in society, I mean, when you really in a park somewhere sleeping maybe, or in a homeless shelter, or you don't have a home, and then you look at society in a very different way. You know, if you later, you never forget that. You know how that feels. Is a Not that I'm saying everybody should
No, of course.
but it's an interesting point of view.
It clearly plays into kind of how who you are today, the musician you are today, moving, you know, traveling back and forth to the US, appearing at Morfest, and then eventually kind of relocating in the US, in North Carolina, where you've been since 2003, right? All those
Yes,
those trips and those journeys together with Uwe must have played into kind of who you are right now as a musician and as a composer.
Yes, I think I was, when I look back, I was always very lucky. I was always lucky in the sense that I always met musicians that were much better than me, you know, that when I and I could learn things from, you know, like, for instance, I was playing in a country band, electric guitar, and there was a piano player. His name was Gino Todesco. And I wondered, what chords are these? And I just realized, oh, he's playing regular triads. You know, he's running regular triads and over my chords and as substitutions. You know, I didn't know that. And then I realized, wow. And so I was always able to, I played another band, and there was David Ruosh, a great jazz player, and I could ask him things, you know, because I never went to music school, but I was never afraid to ask, you know, what was that you just did? Or what is that scale? Or what is, you know, what is that, and how do you use that? Or and I became always very interested in music theory, and so I always had something to talk to musicians that I thought could learn something from. And a lot of times you learn from musicians just being around them, see how they approach music and how they sit there in a session, and how they behave, how they get to play good music. And so I was always fortunate being around good musicians. That's luck, you know, I would say. One of the first musicians the first musician that really inspired me really greatly, still think very, very highly of course, is Bill Monroe. He helped me when I came to America in 1982. He invited me to play with him at Indiana, Bean Blossom, and in the Station Inn, and in the Grand Ole Opry, and several other places. And I lived on his farm for 2 months. And it was great because, you know, we got to jam in the kitchen at night, eat ice cream, and he would ask me, do you write your own music? And I said, not really. I was 19 years old, and I could play a lot of licks and things and combine them. When you're young, you are very capable of being very artistic with your fingers. You can, your mind works fast, and you don't have that much in it. You can use everything to full capacity because you don't see all the other choices. that problem comes later. But he helped me a great deal. He asked me, can you play me something you wrote? And I played him. It's nothing really, but I just, that was something I came up with once, somewhere. And I played that, just that little bit. And he looked at me and said, well, that's you, whether you like it or not. And I thought it was quite, he told me actually quite a few things I didn't want to hear at the time. He said, don't play bluegrass music, it was barely enough for me. Or he would say, you have different influences. You shouldn't play bluegrass. You're not from Kentucky. You have to come up with your own music. And I didn't even know what that meant, when I'm 19. Because today I see people, I see so many young musicians, and they're 16 and they have heard all these things I'm just saying. Or 10 years old, they have heard all this wisdom, that was completely strange to me.
Right.
I came out of a world of analog, telephone, pushing a button, pushing a coin in, and we had 3 channels on the TV, and in Uvemi we would learn a song that we heard on a Country Gentleman album, and just go maybe, and then we would just go and play, and so forth, just things that we listened and learned from cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And sometimes we didn't even know the names of these people. So there was a very different time. And today it's amazing, what young people can already learn. But we had another advantage, that little advantage we had. We didn't know how good other people were. So we never got discouraged much.
Right.
We would play all day and never had doubts that we could also. Of course we have doubts, but today sometimes it's a little sad. Sometimes today, somebody's picking up a guitar and he plays something for his friend, and his friend instantly pulls the cell phone out and shows him a YouTube clip of somebody who can, I don't know, he can eat the guitar while he plays, some Paganini stuff, and it just is it's kind of discouraging. You know what I mean? If you can always out of your pocket, you pull something out that you can never reach. And it's maybe it's also a different mindset today that you can overcome that easier, but we didn't have that. I was the best banjo player I knew because I was the only one there was, until I started playing on the streets, and there was another one. His name was Phil. He played a little clawhammer, and he showed me how to play clawhammer. Never even knew what that was. It was a different world, and today is the influences are different.
Yeah.
Social media plays a big role in that, right?
Yes, I agree.
And kind of the feeling that you're never going to be quite as good as the next guy. But at the same time, I think, across different genres and different instruments, like every even sports, they all have their kind of heroes, right? There was never a video game called Banjo Hero, although I would argue there should have been. But there certainly was a guitar hero, right? And so you had all these perceived heroes in Hendrix and Steve Vai or whoever it might be. And I think there's definitely an argument to say that, it kind of makes you feel like you can't get there. But I think for a lot of people, it's something to aspire to.
Yeah, and basically, you become a child of your generation. Whether you believe that or not. But in my time when I started playing the banjo, Bill Keith was really big in Europe. He played with Jim Rooney, and of course, you know, the Peter Wernick book was out, and of course, you know, Earl Scruggs, Bobby Thompson, you know, John Hickman, Ben Eldridge. And most of these people are, you know, they don't play anymore. You know, they're gone, or you know, I think all of them actually I just named, and but they were a big influence on me. And now today, I was at NAMM show a few years ago, and there was a young man. He actually played interesting things on the banjo. I said, "Wow, that's really good." And I said, "Who do you listen to?" He said, "I don't really know. I'm playing this punk rock band, you know." And I said, "Well, it's good, you know." And I said, "So, do you like Earl Scruggs?" I said, "No, I never heard of him, you know." It's just, it was unimaginable for me growing up that someday, you know, there would be kids playing banjo with 3 fingers and don't even know who J.D. Crowe was, or Earl Scruggs. And it's not because these kids are ignorant, it's because they have other people they know.
Right.
They're, you know, then I think of, how many people do I know that my grandpa actually knew, artists,
right,
you know, that were popular in his time? I'm not talking about the giants. I'm just talking about the general. There's just a fraction left, you know. Most people just sort of disappear, and but still, you know, Earl Scruggs is not is a very, very important figure. But so the influence, you know, of how the styles developed. I was still starting to play the banjo when a lot of technique wasn't even invented yet. You know, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't use certain techniques, like that wasn't really common when I grew up. Bela Fleck changed a lot of the technique. He invented a lot of, you know, a lot of pulling and all kinds of tricks, you know, to play scales, you know, playing the different positions and such. He was really good at that.
Harmonics.
Pardon?
Like harmonics as well. He played a lot of pinch harmonics and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then, you know, you have all the, you know, all the different techniques that you can, and so I was still in a time where banjo technique was developed, you know, in the traditional way. I think today with 3 fingers and the banjo, I mean, almost everything is done that's possible. You know, this it's like guitar. On acoustic guitar, I think almost everything was done already in the mid 80s, you know, that you could do. But the banjo was a little bit lagging behind the guitar, you know, with the development of this thing. So today, if you play a new, you know, if you can really noodle, if you can really play a lot of notes and play, it's not as exciting anymore for the audience, because it's quite normal that you can do that, you know.
I think on the banjo, the we haven't really discovered different textures, and you know, a lot of, because you're playing with a lot of different textures, but you know, so many people are doing kind of a very similar textural thing, where and they aren't really using that much harmony. It's all pretty. The harmony hasn't been that explored on the 5-string banjo.
Yeah, but what's nice, you know, I have a brother who plays the guitar, you know, so I'm playing with the guitar instrument, and because there's already the harmony going on, I can use harmony extensions, you know, to his playing. I don't necessarily in the ballad need to play the same chords as Uwe. Can you come in a little bit so people can see you?
That's
really?
all right.
No, please come here. And that would be nice, you know. Sorry, I kept them such secret.
It's a banjo workshop.
Come in. Okay. So when Uwe plays the G chord, for instance, you know, I don't necessarily need to play that same G chord, you know, in traditional sense, you know. Uwe, let's just play a rhythm, you know. So you know, which is beautiful, but I can easily play. So I'm playing a 9th, which is the 9th would be the A. So by playing it here. But the interesting chord, for instance, you know, when I play a 9th chord, you know, Uwe could also change it to E minor. And the A A minor, hä? Mach das richtig E minor. And D, hä? And G, hä? Let's go. Let's play E. I never changed the chord. Just played the same thing.
You get that suspension sort of feeling.
Yes, I get different chords that happen because my brother plays. Of course, this is not something. It's not anything new. This has always been done, but it's on the banjo. It's not been done that much. Let's put it this way. So let's say if Uwe has a E chord, I can use substitutions for that, which are beautiful. Let's say E minor chord, and I just play a D over it. And so experimenting with different textures, I got very inspired listening to a lot of keyboard players. Because that's what they do. That's their job.
What they have 2 hands to do it.
that's what they do. So I can be part of a keyboard when Uwe plays a ballad or sings a ballad.
Right.
My approach is more a keyboard layers chord structures than just following the chords.
Right.
At all times, just playing the same chords because they're already there.
Right, you're adding color to it,
Yeah, so I can use ninth and sixth and all the chord extensions that are there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's nice, yeah, because we just don't have that many examples of that with banjo players doing these sort of things. So it's nice, it's refreshing.
Yeah, it's fascinating what Bela Fleck does with his wife. What they do, what the music they play together with Abigail. I just saw them. He does a lot of that. Always has done a lot of that. Of course, Tony Trischka has tried do a lot of that. And I think it's just the direction that really works well when you're playing with somebody who sings songs. Sings a slower song, or to come up with new ideas of what you can do.
Do you want to play a song where Uwe sings right now?
Yes, why not? It could be.
Don't want to throw you on the spot, Uwe. Oh, he can't hear.
Actually, yes. Uwe couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Let's play a little bit of People Get Ready. I'm going to put this in front of Uwe a little bit.
Get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord. People get ready for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and board 'em. There's room for all among those who love the most. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner. Heard of no mankind just to save his own. Have mercy on those whose chances grow thinner. There's no hiding place against the kingdom throne. People get ready, there's a train a-coming. You can be the first, you just get on board. All you need is faith, hear the diesel summon. Don't need a ticket, no, you just thank the Lord. You don't need no ticket, no, you just thank the Lord.
That was great.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Outstanding.
Yeah, that's fun.
Noodle doodle.
I just want to comment on something there that I'm looking at the chat right here because Uwe is not monitoring it right now. So
I think Uwe is monitoring.
he's not right now. He's not. John Buchanan made a very good point, which is something that I notice all the time. Is he says, notice how they interweave and play off each other's parts, and it's if you've ever seen you guys play, if anyone's ever seen you guys play live, especially there's a connection that goes on, especially with you and Joel as well, and all three of you together. Like the facial expressions, the eye contact. It's not just about the playing. It's like going back and forth with each other and knowing where each one of you is. Like how much of that plays into what the three of you do, both live, but also kind of when you're creating music together as well.
Well, the creating process of the music is different than the performing. Once we know the structure and we know what we want to do, we're trying to connect emotionally as much as possible, which sometimes works better than others. But the main aim is to connect as much as absolutely possible. So when Uwe starts off a song at a certain speed, we try to adopt to that and then take that. And we don't want, we don't want to say, okay, every night this is going to be exactly this speed, or is it going to be exactly this, like this. It's not exactly the same solos or anything. Mm-hmm. We just play and then see what happens. When we create music, like today, we were working on a new version that we came up with from John Prime's Paradise, a very different version, which has sort of a riff that's like becomes a counterpart melody to the verse. That's a theme, and it's different chords, and it's a totally different structure. And we work really hard on that to get that to the point where it becomes music. Once we have it all figured out, what everybody's playing and where it really goes and how it feels, then we start looking more at each other, actually, just to trying to connect. I think you can see in each other's facial expressions and the hand movements. You can see the entire body. you can sense it sort of, when you, especially when you know each other. Uwe just raises the eyebrow maybe a little bit, and I already know, oh, I'm maybe a little too loud, or or
do different eyebrows mean different things?
No, it's, I don't know. You cannot put your finger on it, but it's like, if you know a person really long, you see in little movements of how he feels. And I think it's important to know how we feel, to check on each other, how we feel. So the communication is not necessarily musically based, not that we give each other hints of what we're going to be playing, but according to how we feel and how the situation right now feels, and how much energy he plays and how much force he puts into this, or how he backs off. I can imagine of what's coming next. So I know to back off, or he starts to play less. I know he's not going to explode in the next second, so I can play more, right? So it's really something that's hard to describe. But a lot of musicians have that, who are not brothers. They just sort of click with each other, and they find this connection to each other. And sometimes, like I said, it's you're tired, we're on the road. It's not that easy, but we're always trying hard to play the music every time as in the moment as possible. Right. And the feeling. So it's not like this is the way the song goes, this is the tempo, and this is what we're going to deliver. It's like before, when let's go back to Margarete, just because you heard it before. So I play, for instance, here, or how I do get faster and slower and all that. That's not predetermined. And that can only happen because you really pay close attention to the intention of the other musician.
Right.
And this is, I think, this is the most consuming effort we do on stage. Not trying to invent new notes, is trying to be together of how we want to play them tonight.
Right, you're dancing together almost.
Yes, you really need to. It's difficult. I think it's a huge challenge, and this is what makes. It's also what gives us the joy of everyday concerts, because we can go on a long stretch of playing, and every night is a new night. Every night we play it in a little different way. We feel different, and we find new ways of playing the same material. And it's the same in classical music, basically. You're not playing every night the same. You're not playing the same exactly. You're maybe close sometimes, but it's always something new, even though the notes maybe have not changed. So we have two categories of pieces. The songs like, People Get Ready, where we more or less know what we're going to do. And then we have the pieces that are the compositions, where we pretty much know exactly what the notes, but then we can give more emphasis in just interpretation together with Joel and the orchestra, to find a way. And when it's loose, it's more, there's a rhythm section and then there's a good solo over it or something.
Jens, there was just a question from Barbara. She asked how you write everything down. Do you use a pen and paper, or use a computer program, and how do you do that?
Okay, to remember most of my themes, I use my little iPad and just play them on the voice recorder. And then I have in my scrapbook, I write in, I just write it either as tablature, a sequence, or I write it in as music, as notation. And then when I compose actually the entire score, I go to Logic and write it into Logic, because then I also have sample players that help me sort of imagine what the string quartet will actually sound like I'm writing, and that helps me, So then I write it into the computer.
You write it in using a keyboard?
No, I write it in with the mouse. Just write it in.
Note by note.
I don't know. Yes, note by note. I don't have a keyboard where I just, sort of write in. I've seen people do that, and I wish I could, but still have to think about really every note, especially when I write counterpoint and, contrary moving melody lines. And I really want to have every note under control I write. I don't want to just, I had a MIDI guitar, and I used a MIDI pickup on the banjo, and I could, but the problem was it would not sync up. Then you had to quantize all the time, and then I ended up, playing what I could always play, and it wasn't inspiring because when I then write down things, I can follow the melodies and the ideas I have in my head, on a micro level.
And are you writing on the banjo usually, or are you coming up with the notes on the banjo and then writing it down? Or you?
Well, yes, for my melody playing, yes. For my melodic playing, I'm trying to work them out on the banjo. I make sure that I can play them before I, compose everything around. But for the orchestra, of course, for the strings and such, I play enough violin so I know the positions and I know what's possible and whatnot. And that's the challenge writing for a string quartet, because you're writing basically for 4 virtuosos, and you don't want to play things, you don't want to, write things that are too demanding so they don't sound good anymore, and you don't want to underestimate what they can do. So it's good to understand the instruments to a level that you understand this can be executed well, and this sounds really good, and you can put this together like that, and to understand the range of the instruments, and that really helps, and it's a satisfying process actually when you have then in the end maybe a string quartet is really happy and wants to play your pieces, and it's actually very beautiful. But I just write them in, I don't learn them on the banjo. I have these song pieces and passages where they play alone, where we don't perform, in the piece, and I love it. I actually would like to write more classical music just for the parts, don't even play on it.
What's been the most satisfying piece that you've written, like when you finally get to hear it come to life with the quartet, or what's been the most rewarding part of it, do you think? Is there a specific piece that stands out for you?
There's a lot of pieces. The Council of the Migrant Jesters, for instance, was always it's from Roan Mountain Suite, the last movement. A very satisfying piece to play with the orchestra. Also for symphony, we have pieces written that I think they're just fabulous. When you sit there, it's also, I play maybe, and there's a whole symphony behind us, and Uwe says it's a little bit like there's a huge Jens sitting all around him, because every note, comes out of my idea. And
exactly.
and of course, the nice thing about orchestration, I can give them all the parts I can play. Of course, the banjo is very limited in comparison, to the abilities of an orchestra, but and it's so much fun. I have lines that can double. I can use all these harmonic structures, behind it that I want to hear. It's a beautiful thing. Then you sit on stage and you have a room full of people, and this is glorious sound coming from behind. It's really rewarding. It really is.
So do they have any input?
Pardon me?
I was just going to ask, do they have any creative input in what you do? So, I mean, you write the parts, you bring it to them, you play it together, and you run through kind of what's going on, and maybe there's something that didn't quite turn out how you imagined it might turn out. Do you allow them any creative freedom in that sense on their respective instruments, or is it really how you want it to go?
It's pretty much written as is, and what I really go through is not the music. I don't go through it with the musicians as much as with the conductor. So usually with the conductor, I sit down before the rehearsals and we go through each piece of, and I maybe play for him so he can see what the emotion is, how it really feels. And I maybe give him some pointers. There's a lot of markings in the score, of course, that helps him to conduct. And usually they have the score quite in advance, and I talk to them on the phone about the piece, or they listen even to the recordings, of the pieces, and then they can go from there. But it's sometimes challenging, there's sometimes things are quite hard. And then you have orchestra. For instance, I did a few, there's not boo-boos, but things I wouldn't do anymore. Like I had a beautiful intro, like, and this note here, this note, I written it for French horn, this D. And this high D on the French horn is possible because French horn goes up to F, and the D would be possible, but only for a really good player. And just out of the blue, play that D really precise is a real challenge. I wasn't aware of this problem. I would have probably then written it for trumpet. It would have been much easier. It would have sounded good, you know. But I written it for the French horns, you know. And then we had places where the conductor said, "Oh, it's no problem. My French horn player can do that." And then, and then during the concert, you start like, it was like, oh, okay. You know, also rhythmic passages, you know, that are very common to us as musicians who are common, you know, have common knowledge of jazz or syncopation. Sometimes it's difficult for orchestras to follow a passage that goes. You know, it's not easy because it's not what classical players do all the time. And when you play with a community orchestra, it's asked a lot, you know. So sometimes you take these pieces out, or this here. So, you know, for us this is quite normal, but for orchestra in the back with the trumpets, and then there's the time delay and the stage delay, and so I had to learn that sometimes even things that seem straightforward are not that easy for orchestra to execute, you know, on the fly. And then other things that I thought might be very difficult, they're very easy for them. So it's a learning curve, you know. Yeah.
And how much, and back in when you're, how much improvisation goes when you're playing with the Kruger brothers, or for like first when you're playing like a traditional piece versus something original that you've written, or when you're playing with an orchestra? There may be probably, are there spots for improvisation?
In the orchestra, I built in spots for improvisation. I always write in passages where Uwe can get out of this corset of music and turn loose a little bit, you know, and have his freedom, where I give him a chord structure where he can, you know, just turn loose and be himself, and need some, you know, playtime. And because it's quite demanding, Uwe's not playing, for instance, the melody part, and so there's a lot of chord structures that he has to remember, and it's not as, and then he has to pay attention to my speed, and it's a very demanding job actually playing guitar with me, and so so in our program, you know, the singing songs that Uwe does, there's about 50% of the singing songs that are pretty set. There's not much improvisation going on, but there's about 50% of the songs, I would say, where there's quite some improvisation going on. That's a big relief for me and for Uwe and for everybody, just to have that time. On the other hand, it's beautiful to have very set things. You know, I like the contrast of the very set things that are just, you just have the freedom and you just give yourself that freedom of interpretation, which is like a freeing limitation. That sounds weird, you know, because I don't have to think about notes. I don't have to think about the notes I will be playing. They're all set. So I don't have to worry about them. And it gives me lots of freedom just to think about the interpretation. And so that gives me that freedom. And then sometimes, on the other hand, I have the songs where I don't really know what I'm going to play, and I have the freedom of the notes. And so we try to have a mixture of that during the concerts. And of course, Uwe sings the songs, and I write the instrumentals, or for the songs, I sometimes also come up with the melodies, you know, or the arrangements, you know, for chord structures or something like that.
Yeah, it's good. It gives the band, you know, everybody in the band a way to mentally kind of breathe, doing different things, and then also the audience, you know, so it's not a, you know, one kind of very rigid sort of thing where it's just too much jamming or too much rigidity, you know.
Yeah, in the moment, it's been an interesting time this year because we haven't been on the road since March. We came home from England in March, and everything shut down, and we pretty much stayed at home since. We had our first live stream that we did a few days ago for the IBMA. That's going to be aired, I think on the 2nd of October, on a rooftop in Raleigh. It was very weird to sit in the van and go somewhere. It felt good, with me sitting in front, who was driving there, and we're talking, drinking coffee like in the good old days. And for us, it was a good feeling. But it's been quite challenging. And what we realized early on in this situation, that we needed to connect with our audience via streaming. So we read up, on how the technical side would work maybe for that, and we got some cameras and iPhones, and we have a bigger Sony camera, and we got lights. We changed the studio. We opened up a wall, so we have the drummer in the room with the plexiglass, and so we're doing 2 shows per week on Friday night at 7 and Saturday night at 7. And it always starts at 7. There's a little pre-show, 10 minutes, quarter hour, where we just noodle around. Nobody can see us, but we're doing sound check and such. And then we do a 45-minute set. And we've been doing this now since end of March. And it's for us, it helps us to survive in the moment, invested. So we have multiple cameras, and our assistant, our office assistant is swiping through the different cameras, and we have a little intro, and it's actually a cute little show, really is. And we have quite a few people who.
Facebook, is it?
It's on Facebook and YouTube. Yes, you can go to Kruger Brothers Facebook or Kruger Brothers YouTube channel, and you can see it there. It's free. You can. It's every Friday night at 7 and Saturday night at 7, and it's a lot of fun. And especially was challenging for us. Not challenging. It's challenging and fun at the same time. It's we played well over 200 songs, different songs in all the shows now. So we have done several songs again, like Carolina Falls, and People Get Ready, or we had a few requests and things that we had to do again and wanted to do again. But it's still, it's amazing, that we got, over 200 songs now that we played, in these shows. And we have a new show coming up, for tomorrow. We're going to have a show Saturday. And it's a different life, and so we'll see, how long we probably want to try to continue this as long as we can, even though if we have concerts again, maybe do it on different days, or, we don't know. But I think it's a beautiful way of connecting to the people, lots of positive responses and lots of comments, and the nicest thing to see is the community that starts to develop out of the audience itself. So they talk to each other, and they say, "Oh, you're here again," and so it's community.
Like going to a festival.
Yeah, it's like going to a festival. People see each other again, and they tune in, and they know it's going to be Friday night, so they're going to see the Kruger Brothers. Right. and it's a lot of fun. And also we had guests, like Josh Goforth, we had Laura Businger, we just had Patrick Crouch, and we have great pianist Dennis, and Jody Call is a drummer, a really good friend of ours, and he's been with us playing drums, percussion for more than a year now. And he's helping us tremendously, doing these shows, because we also take out the electric guitar sometimes, or play different kinds of music. And it's just great to have this percussion element if you're playing variety of music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need it's great y'all are doing it. We need music out there. Everybody needs something,
Yeah, it's that's why we deliberately, we're not talking about Corona or we want to have people just forget about, and the troubles,
Yeah.
You know, just to have a good time and enjoy music. And it's very important that we can do this. It's what we do. You know, we're the ones who want to help atmosphere to be better from our perspective. You know, we want to.
Music makers, right?
Well, there's different takes. You know, a lot of people say, well, it's art. You know, you can do whatever you want, and then people do whatever they want with it, and it's art. You know, as long as you create a sensation and a reaction and an emotional response of some kind. But when I was younger, I realized that there's a big responsibility as soon as you are on a stage or you play for people. Let's say you have 10 people in a room and you say something, you can change the atmosphere of the room by who you are, how do you present yourself, and how much good can you bring into the room.
Right.
You know, you can say a few things where everybody afterwards treats each other better.
Yeah.
Or you could maybe even say a few things where everybody gets very nervous or even becomes not nice to each other or depressed or and you know, so at one point as an artist, you know, you can make choices of who you want to be in your job or what you want to do. And I find it to be very satisfying to go on stage and try to elevate in a sense of positiveness, very simple, you know, very simple feelings, you know, I mean, not complex feelings, but simple in a sense of common, you know, something not, yeah.
Do you want to play something?
We was playing something.
We know it's, how are you doing for time, guys? Because we know it's pretty late out there now, so are you guys okay, or are you?
We can go all night. No, I know you have to go to sleep there.
Oh, no, that's fine.
You see, I once played I was hired to give a workshop for banjo virtuosos things in Banjo Camp North, great banjo camp. Bill Keith was there, and it's quite a while ago. And I was in this classroom talking about all the things, you know, the tricks and all the things, how you can play more notes in less time, and you know, harmonic concepts, and you know, all different things, and I had a whole group full of people, and a whole room full of people, and they were all very eager to learn, and they were like, oh, and how did you do that and do that? And there was an older gentleman sitting in front of me, and he was holding his banjo like this, and he was obviously in the wrong class. You know, it was, and then I realized, I remembered that this is not why I started playing music. I mean, I said to everybody, this is all very interesting things and stuff, but I didn't start playing music because I started playing music because music touched me. It opened a pathway, a door to imagination, to worlds I would like to be in, an escape route, you know, a way of connecting with other people. And so I said, well, the banjo sounds beautiful like it is, you know, just a chord. So I played this. I just, on the spot, Joel was there. I just said to Joel, play G, and then A, and such. And then we just came up with this because it doesn't need to be complicated.
Yep.
To be music.
That was
That was
great.
beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
And it's the name of it, Beautiful Nothing, because you know it's not virtuoso. I know that we're long into the pod, but I would really like to talk about Deering Banjos a little bit, because you know the banjo construction and my relation to Deering.
We can do that a little bit, yeah, for sure.
Because people have seen me play Deering Banjo, you know, for a long time, and I met Greg and Janet at Merlefest 1997. I have a lot of students, you know, in Switzerland, and they needed banjos, and I had a good friend who built banjos on the side, but he just couldn't fulfill all the demand. And so I was looking for a banjo that was affordable and sounded good. So I was selling lots of Sierras. I wasn't selling them. I was telling a music store that I knew to import them. And so they did. And my students started playing. I was really impressed by the quality, you know, for what they costed and what they cost. And so at Merlefest, I met Janet and Greg, and we became instant friends, instantly. It's been beautiful. So I've been always involved in banjo construction because of my friend Bobby Lauer, who built banjos in Switzerland, and he ordered parts, you know, from First Quality and from Stuart McDonald's, and you know all these different banjo part manufacturers and you know sellers, and so he would build actually very beautiful instruments out of these parts. But it was great, you know, we got to experiment with different types of tone rings, and we would, you know, make them smaller and bigger and get different wood rims and, you know, try all kinds of things to make the sound, you know, see what it does to the sound of the banjo. He was an engineer himself, so he was very interested. So I had a real, you know, brother there, you know, trying to figure out, you know, what a banjo could sound like other than just this, you know, the banjos we had. And then that helped me over years and years, you know, to understand the instrument better and better and better, of how to set it up and what makes it tick, you know, from the tailpiece to the frets to the flange to everything, because we tried it all out on 100 different models, hundreds, and then we started making tone rings. I still have in my attic, I still have at least 100 tone rings we poured, you know, different alloys and different, and so with Greg, it was amazing, you know. So I really like to share this story because it's so significant to my life. And I was always on the road because I was a musician. I was gone, and my children were small, and I had to be on the road a lot and go back and forth between America and Europe. And at one point, I thought maybe it's better if we would relocate to America. Just come here. But that wasn't easy because I'm not American, and to get a green card and the working permit and all that, that's not quite easy. So I needed an official job. Now at the IBMAs, a few years ago, Janet said, if you ever want a job, just call me. And so I called her up. I said that December, I said to her, I called her up, Janet, did you ever mention something about the job? She said, yeah, you hired. I said, and I was like that. She said, you're hired. And we didn't even talk because she just said, just tell us what we can do better or help us with the banjos, of what we could improve. And I said, well, that would be amazing. And so I called up the immigration lawyer that was helping us at the time. I was telling her, I got a job, now what? And she was quite astounded. She said, wow, you already got a job. It took you 5 minutes. And we've been friends of Janet and Greg, for a long time. With Uwe and Joel, we played. We still got to visit them when they were still in Lemon Grove and in the old company. And then now they're Lemon, yeah. And now in the new company, when they opened it, we played them the empty hall. We opened. We were in there, with Okie Adams and everybody, and there was a few hundred people. And I remember, that Bob Taylor came and everybody. So that was quite a long time ago. That was before we moved to America. And so we've been friends a long time. And Janet and Greg have helped me tremendously, with the banjos. I was actually, I was asked by Gibson if Gibson could sponsor me, at the time. And Todd Wright at the time would come, and say, we would like you to have a Gibson. But I had an old Gibson that I played and I liked. And so I said, well, and I looked at the new banjos that they had and I thought, well, they're good, but they're actually not quite as good as the banjo I'm already playing. So I'm standing there and Janet is over at the Deering booth and she looks at me and says, hey, Jens, what are you doing? I said, well, Gibson might want to, give me a banjo or, help me, because I don't want to maybe travel with my old banjo all the time. And so she said, yeah, have you ever tried one of ours? That was in the very beginning of our, sort of friendship. And I said, yes, but, my banjo is actually fairly good, and I don't even know if I want to, play another instrument. Mm-hmm. And then she said, hey, why don't we all go out for dinner with Uwe and Joel and Philip at the time? And we were in the Gold House Hotel, in Louisville, Kentucky. And Janet was there with Carolina and sitting at the table having dinner. And then she said, so Jens, it's like that. How about that? We build you anything you want until you're happy.
Way to do it.
And I said, are you kidding me? And she said, no, not at all. Well, because
Janet didn't know what she was getting into at that moment.
How many glasses of wine were there?
And then there's and so I told her, I would like to try. And so they built me a banjo and they built me another one. And I visited the company and we worked more. And that's when she said, if you ever, needed a job. And so from there on, with Greg, of course, with Greg is this big bear and you just gotta love him, he's just the best. So, so with Greg, we had so much fun, I would come in sometimes into the company years ago and we would work on prototypes like for the Eagle or, for other banjos. And we would come in and I would always come in for 3-4 days, at the time, and they would say, okay, sleep's canceled. And we would sometimes get from the airport and we would go to the company and don't even, and just work all night. And I think we once made, I think we made 3 prototypes in 2 days, and went to the benches, there's nobody working at night. So we have the entire company for ourselves. And it was amazing. We tried all kinds of different woods and tone ring shapes. And I mean, we just completely turned loose, in an experimental stage of what we could do. And for me, it's a dream time. Actually, for me, it's amazing what I could learn and amazing what we could achieve. And so we took pretty much every part on the banjo and reinvented it. over the years, including the tuning pegs. Everything is reinvented on this banjo, either with the companies that make the tuning pegs, like Goto at the time, or we changed the banjo heads. Even with Remo, we changed the resonator shapes, the tone ring shapes, the wood rims, the flanges, the coordinator rods, the truss rods, the frets, the binding, everything, the lacquer. I mean, everything has been reinvented, tailpiece, everything. And I think so. I'm so proud of what the company's been doing for the banjo world, because the quality is so high, and they're trying so hard to keep, the work in San Diego, pay the people right, treat them well, and have a good company. And for me, this is it's been an amazing friendship. And because we're on the Deering podcast, I really want to talk about that, because I'm so deeply involved. And now, of course, I met Jamie Deering when she was, I think, 18.
Wow. Yeah.
18 at the NAMM show. She once came by, and there was never a thought of course, of Jamie. She was a baby underneath the table at one of the first NAMM shows. Right?
That's right. She's in a bassinet under the table at the show.
Yeah, so now she's running the company, and of course, along with the help of the entire staff, and but she's phenomenal and taken over, in the tradition, and she has phenomenal new ideas. She was long, and Jamie was long. She was an amazing asset to the company, because she took over artist relation at one point, and she brought in all these connections to younger generations, like Mumford and Sons, and I wanted to say Drop Dead Murphy. What is it? Dropkick Murphy. No, all these fantastic bands, that the Avett Brothers, and and all the bands. And she just has such a way, when you look at Jamie, she has such a way to be with people, that you see an open heart. There's no hidden anything. She's just open and as nice as it can be, and you can talk to her, and these artists feel really safe, because they can say, oh, I'd like to have a banjo like this, like I'd like to have a banjo that looks like that or sounds like that, or I can plug in, or they have special needs, for their profession, and Jamie will make it happen, and with the whole crew, with Chad, and of course, Jamie, Laddie, and all the input, and David, you've been so important for the company with the advertisement and everything. So I'm very proud. Yeah. No. It's now I have to say that, I'm really, really proud to be part of this, of the Deering company, because it's a real partner for me. And it helped me a lot in my life, to actually come to America. I would not be in America without Deering, because then after 3 years, I was able to apply. In the 3 years that I came with my family, I was able to apply for a green card. And I could not have made this process, without the help of Jan and Greg. And they have now, like Hank Smith is a great banjo player, who does, and they help Hank, and they help everybody that loves banjo. They're open-hearted and welcomed in them. And I think we were able to bring a new banjo to the table for professional banjo players, with a new standard, a real high, extreme high standard, like people like Terry Bokum would trust it, and more and more people, professional players see, oh yeah, that's actually an unbelievable choice of instrument. And I'm very proud to be a part of that.
We're honored to have you as well, Jens, because
the other ones, the cheaper ones, because the entry level.
Yes, yes. No, Uwe is really right. I was talking about but when you look at the good time banjos, the good time banjos is
revolutionary. It
was revolutionary. It was the best entry banjo level banjo there is, and still is. And if you want to start playing the banjo, you just get a good time and you're all set. And the nice thing is, if you have a problem with it, you just call Deering, in San Diego. It just works. They help you. And so, well, yeah, hats off. Anyway, so when you see me, I just broke my banjo neck last year, of my signature model. That's why I don't have the neck of my signature model on here. But I was promised I get a you, Nick.
Yeah, we're
But,
gonna hook you up. You just paid
but-
for it in kind.
No, but this is really good.
It's you're absolutely right there, Jens, and it's I think testament, you know, when you're talking about Greg and Janet and it's the generosity as people. You know, I've been with the company nearly 10 years. David, you've been with us longer than that, and I think we can all agree that Janet and Greg are probably two of the most generous people on the face of the planet, and their just need and desire to help, like genuinely help people, kind of spills over into what they do in a company. By really just wanting people to be able to play and providing those resources and people to look up to. I think you touched as well on the artists like Jamie bringing on other artists as well, and that's and it's another long time Deering thing to where it's never mattered what you play, you know. So we can go from a Tony Trischka to a Terry Bachman to a Ryan Kavanagh to a Jeff DeRosa playing basically punk music, you know, to Mumford & Sons.
Yes,
all the way through, and it doesn't matter.
And Satriani and Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart. Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks, I should say.
You know.
And it's remarkable when you think about it. You know,
I think, you know, Greg was always he was always said, we're not building banjos, we're building dreams, and it's true, because music, that's what music is. You know, it's a dream. You know, it's an idea. And it's beautiful that people who make these instruments always also think like the people who play it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jens, where are you at as far as, let's talk about real quick, what's next? What are you working on right now?
Actually, I have a interesting project. Actually, we're going on tour in October, it looks like, to Switzerland. We have 9 concerts set up, and it looks like we can play the concerts. There's restrictions, you know, of how many people can be in a room and wearing face masks and so forth. But it looks like we can go through. Joel will not go with us. We're going to have working with Peter and Walter Kaiser in Switzerland, really two famous, really phenomenal musicians, bass and drums. And it's going to be a little different program, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And so we're looking forward for that. Going out the country, we have to go to quarantine for 10 days when we get to Europe.
That's right.
And then we can start rehearsing and go on tour. It's going to be interesting to do that. And I'm also composing a new commission, a piece. It's called. I had the idea a few years ago. We're living in Wilkes County in North Carolina, which has sort of its nickname, the moonshine capital of the world. I think there's a few places in the Appalachians who claim that name, maybe, but Wilkes County definitely has a right to claim it because NASCAR started here, Junior Johnson, you know, and this was the races between the moonshine drivers, you know, who would deliver the moonshine to some place because they had to be able to maybe outrun a police car or such. And of course, there's a Moonlight Sonata written. Of course, Beethoven didn't name it Moonlight Sonata; it was later named. But I thought, why don't I write the Moonshine Sonata?
I like that. That's cool.
So sonata in a, you know, and there's a little irony, you know. And now I have a commission by friends here in Wilkesboro and some moonshine companies that actually to write the Moonshine Sonata for Wilkes County. And who else would write it than me? You know, I play banjo and I write classical, so Moonshine Sonata is pretty much, you know, what I have to do. It's like destiny. And the hardest part is now I have my whole cupboard full of moonshine, and I have to go through all it and learn about the effects of moonshine. No, it's not true. But you know, but the Moonshine Sonata is fun. I'm experimenting with new dissonances and counter ideas, and so it's a great challenge, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's a great process. And the irony about it is that a sonata is basically a piece for solo or a small ensemble, meaning two, or maybe 3 people, but usually 2 people or one person. And it's the sonata form has three parts, the distinct parts, you know, in the old times. And then you add a 4th part and the 5th part, one in the beginning, one in the end, maybe. But as soon as this sort of sonata form gets played with more people than 2 or 3 or 4, and you have an orchestra. It's called symphony, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so it's irony. I'm writing it for string quartet, Uwe, Joel, and me, and percussion, and I still kind of call it sonata, right? So maybe it
That's
is.
very cool.
Maybe there's some double vision involved or something.
where are you drawing your inspiration from?
But I will have some parts, where I play alone, I guess. But it's nice to stick to a musical form. Of course, sonata form today is not what it used to be in the Baroque times or what it was in the Romantic times. It always had its flavors, and different composers, even Beethoven would write sonatas that were far away from the idea of a sonata, basically. Sometimes he would not even play the third part, or would not stick to the development issues that were involved, and would come up with complete new ideas. So I'm actually quite free, and because the moonshine taxing, the whiskey taxing started right after the Revolutionary War, I can go actually back, 200 years easily with my musical ideas, and don't have to stick to modern ideas. I can have the influence from the last 200 years in my music, which gives me another great freedom, to stick with the theme. So that's next. So I'm writing, and I have already orchestrated about 8 minutes, I guess, and I have themes for maybe another 15, 20. But it's going to premiere sometime then in the fall. So it's an ongoing process. Very happy one.
Next fall.
Next spring. Sorry, next spring.
Spring.
Sorry. All right, my friends. I think
All right. Well, listen, David, thank you very much for helping out here today. This is awesome. Jens and Uwe, it's been a pleasure. You got to play us out, though.
Okay, we will.
Would you mind?
We play loud.
Thank you to everybody for joining us today.
I think we're going to play. It's night out there.
Yeah.
We're going to play a little bit of Night Skies, I think.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We're great having you again, and we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Stay safe, and thank you for everyone for tuning in tonight. We'll see you next Thursday.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.